Good morning, everyone. Today it is the June 1st, and so it is our first SIG Node weekly in the June, and summer is officially here. And let's start with our normal start circuit. And Alana, do you want to share with the team about the PR status and also backtrack status?
Yeah, we are growing on PR number, but I think mostly because the week was slow and there was a weekend and like long holiday in US, and weather is good outside. So I guess that's a reason that everything is slow.
Yeah, agreed that things have been a little bit slow, but I think the board is mostly caught up. One of the things that I wanted to mention was that reminder that code freeze is coming sooner than you think. It's July 8th, which is in about 5.5 weeks from now. So it's coming. And in terms of PRs I've seen coming in, I know we have a lot of KEPs for this cycle, and a lot of those KEPs have not had any code PRs yet. So please make sure you get that up early. We don't want to have like a big last minute thundering herd of changes to make. So you've got almost 6 weeks. Get at it.
Maybe we can lock down like I think the June 20th something, and dedicate that to go through those pending PR and also the CAP status, implement development status. Maybe we can do something like that.
On
like
the June 22nd meeting?
Yeah, we can do the June 22nd or to June 28th, I think, maybe. Something like that before the totally code freeze.
Yeah,
thanks.
Makes sense. Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, thanks. So Sergey, you have some announcement before we
we have some contributors from APAC who wants to join CI meetings. So we're thinking to start once a month having APAC friendly time for CI and triage meetings. We will probably start next week. I'll send an updated invite. So it will be 9 p.m. PST.
Was it 9 or 8? I thought it was 8.
Yes, it was 8.
8 to 9.
8 to 9 PST. Yeah.
We have some time from a doodle in UTC somewhere. I will go look up what it is.
Sure. Thanks for the update. Any question? Any comment? Okay, let's move to the Swati. Last time we ran out of time, so sorry for keep you wait for this week. Swati, no you are up.
Yeah, so I had been investigating Pod Resource API kind of for the use case that we have. We are trying to work on node feature discovery to expose resources per NOMA. So we've been kind of heavily invested on this work. And I came across a few things when I was working on this. So I've created 2 issues pertaining to the 2 items I identified. So the first one, as you see linked in the agenda doc, is the ability, or rather the inability, to account for available CPUs as guaranteed pods could belong to shared pool. So kind of the primary goal for Pod Resource API, which has been captured in the Kubernetes enhancement proposal itself, is that you should be able to account for available resources on a certain node. So Pod Resource gives information about the available resources kind of on the node, the resources known to the node, which could be CPUs and devices. And memory is kind of is underway with Memory Manager moving to beta. And the list endpoint gives us information of the pods that have been allocated certain resources. So that basically gives you the ability to kind of identify what are the available resources. But the challenge that we have is, which is kind of captured in this issue, is that guaranteed pods, which are non-integral, they belong to the shared pool, and Pod Resource API exposes those. And essentially that becomes challenging because we don't know what exactly the shared pool is. It shrinks and grows depending on how the the exclusive CPUs are allocated. So that was the primary issue, and then we had kind of a lively discussion on one of the proposed fixes. So it ranged from maybe exposing a simple flag to a new endpoint which exposes the shared pool, all the way up to even a generic endpoint that exposes all the pools that could exist. We had a follow-up discussion with Intel on this, and the idea that came up was that we could, as part of Pod Resource API, expose the requests and limits as well. But I wanted to use this forum as an opportunity to see what others in the community think. How do they think? Like what seems to be the right option. So if you have opinions, just please go to the issue or the discussion that we had and kind of maybe express what you prefer and what probably is the ideal solution in this case to tackle that. That brings me to my kind of next question. This was almost like a bug because it does not meet its original goal. So I was wondering, like, can this be fixed in 1.22 timeframe, or does this mean that we have to push it until 1.23?
I think it depends on what's the proposal, and also what's the problem scope it is. I read your bug before this meeting, the issue you file. I have to say that I know there's the problem. So that's why when the first exclusive proposal, I think I did a warning. I said if you want to reserve the CPU, if for sure guarantee, please make sure you are file of the integer of the CPU request, which it is, and also guarantee, so which means you are always got exclusive, reserved CPU assigned. That it is simplified. But a lot of users still want professional CPU request. And so we even discussed, like, do we want to round up or scale down to the interval? I remember we still have that discussing a while back. But anyway, there's no conclusion. So we basically want to do the best effort. If you ask the fractional CPU, and then you end up have the shared pool. My question it is, I read this one. So you did list the problem in the when we first designed. We reset I did reset problem because I saw that in the past. So my question it is, I'm a little bit confused what you propose, what kind of problem, and we want to address here. It is, yeah, please.
Yeah, let me clarify that a bit. So like you mentioned, the CPU manager currently just allocates exclusive CPUs to pods that are guaranteed and request integer. All the others belong to the shared pool. So that includes your best effort, burstable, and guaranteed with non-integral resources. So in case of Pod Resource API, it's an endpoint that monitoring applications could use. We use it for like accounting resources in case of NFD. And it exposes information like pertaining to pods that are allocated devices and guaranteed pods in general. So the guaranteed pods could be pods with integral request and non-integral request. So currently Pod Resource API exposes both of these kinds of pods. And the challenge is when you query the endpoint, you end up seeing pods that belong to the shared pool as well. And there's no way to know if that pod was actually allocated those CPUs because it was an exclusive CPU request or it was because it was shared pool. It's a range of CPUs, like you can't just from the API determine if it was the shared pool. So I think there's some addition we need to make into the Pod Resource API to make sure it conveys like the right message. So yeah, so in terms of my question, I think like initially we thought that it could have been like almost a minor bug fix, but it's almost going towards, changes in the API. So like I kind of know the answer, but I just want to make sure, like, is there any scope that we could maybe handle it in 1.22 timeframe, or like it would have to be pushed to 1.23?
So how other people think?
So I would say, I mean, I just took a very quick look at the cap. If the graduation guidelines for beta are not being met, it can't graduate this release. But like, it's already targeted for beta this release. So as long as you fix that, there's no issue with trying to still graduate it for 122. It's just a matter of whether or not that gets done and if the graduation criteria are being met.
So essentially, we are making changes to an API which has already graduated, I believe. So pod resource API has already graduated to beta, and we are planning to make changes to that.
Is that true? Because the cap that you linked, according to the metadata, says it is graduating to beta in 122, and it is not yet graduated.
I believe it has graduated again. Alexei.
Like it does not have any feature gate at all. Like at least
Yeah,
for
right.
the list.
Well, whether or not it has a feature gate, according to the cap, it says it's targeting beta for 122.
I think that might be a mistake in the cap itself, like in the metadata of the cap. But I can check with Alexei on that. But
the cap also says that there is a feature gate, so I mean, maybe not the right thing was linked, but I'm looking at 2403.
2403.
Which is the resources allocable.
Francesco here. I outread the 2403, and 2403 concerns with the new endpoint. Thing is, additions were made to both list and get allocable endpoints to represent the concrete resources. So it went like this. Changes were made to list and to represent the concrete resources, namely the CPUs, and then pod resources went stable. After that, the cycle after, we introduced the new endpoint, which its own feature gate.
I see.
I hope it helps.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, in terms of API changes, if you are making a compatible API change, it should be fine. If it's not a compatible API change, that's where the issue comes in. And I don't know that like it's a matter of a single cycle. I think you'd have to talk to an API reviewer.
Okay, I can do that.
I think most of the changes what we are trying to propose is additional fields. So the background of this is what, like if we need to calculate properly the state of a kubelet and we're accounting what kubelet is doing, we need to know not only where the CPU is assigned, but how much actually it was requested and limits. That will help us to, what will allow us to calculate properly what is the size of a shared pool, like how much it can be shrunk or expanded based on not only guaranteed containers, but the rest of the containers, what is running on the node. So we just need to expose a bit more information about containers to make it properly working.
Now I understand what Sveti proposal, and I think it is like what you say. It's kind of like the could be treated bug fix for existing feature, but because it is required API change, if you can get API reviewer like the Alila earlier suggest to agree, let's just go proceed, because it is indeed a bug for the feature as we roll out. So
cool. Okay, that sounds good.
Yeah.
So I can try to reach out to the API reviewers and see what they think, and we can take it from there. Okay,
Yeah,
again, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, this Markus, I was taking a look at the required changes, and it looks like they should be like backward compatible. All the additions that we need to make, but we'll need to iron out the details still.
Cool. Thanks, Markus. And then I have just kind of a related the second issue that I have. So this one is related to clarifying the behavior of get allocatable resources. So again, no major change. It's just update to the doc and an update to the KEP to clarify and emphasize the capability of this particular endpoint. And I don't think that this needs to be handled in a separate cycle. So if people could take a look at this, so this can kind of make its way in, that would be really helpful. So yeah, this is the second part I was just speaking about.
Swati, thanks for the this one. We will process offline, and just like earlier, what I say that depend on what you propose, what and also scope and also compatibility. So for the small bug fix and the API change, I think you really need to convince of the API reviewer and SIG Node will support if you can convince them so to make this move forward. But if we couldn't, let's just follow the process, not stop the work, right? So we can do this as soon as possible in the next release, and the rest of the stuff we follow the process as much as possible. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. Just want to emphasize that these two are kind of slightly unrelated, the two items that I have. So the second one is kind of not related to the API discussion that we had. This is completely unrelated, update to docs and KEP. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's also I try to mention here because let's not treat the same, and then just kind of get to the one in. So that's why I just don't want to say like we will support the first one if API reviewer and support fix that bug, and the second one needs to follow the process and what we should do, and we do our best. And but if we couldn't, and that's the follow the process. Yeah.
Okay, sure. Thanks. Thanks, John.
Thanks. So next one, Vinay, do you want to?
Yeah, hi, everyone. Vinayak. And I just wanted to briefly introduce this KEP that we're proposing for ambient capability support. I talked about it in the SIG security meeting, and there's a lot of people who want this to land. And so like the KEP, in the KEP, we're proposing some changes to like the CRI API. And we were looking for someone from SIG Node to kind of sign up as or volunteer as like the approver and reviewer for this change. And I think in the doc, someone did, so which is cool. Yeah, it's just like we're proposing a change, so we'd like someone from SIG Node to kind of look at it and approve the change. Also, if someone from Containerd is here and they would like to look at it, because we're also proposing that Containerd kind of make changes once the CRI API changes land, so that they can start like setting the ambient capabilities. So if somebody from Containerd is here and they would like to sign up as a reviewer and approver for this, that would be awesome too. Because I know there are folks from CRI.io who are on the who reviewed the KEP.
Yeah, so I looked at it like maybe I think Mike Brown or Lantao or someone can take a look. The changes should be straightforward on the runtime side. Yeah, Mike.
Sure, we'll take a look.
Yep. Cool. Who's gonna take a look? Sorry.
So Mike Brown from Containerd, and I'll help on the node and cryo side. And Vinayak, like one question I have is, did you speak with the PSP++ folks to see how it's going to intersect there? The SIG-Auth side, I think.
I haven't, but that's a good call. I should do that. I will add someone if
I think Tim,
you know someone, can you CC them?
Yeah, Tim Allclair is already involved there. So we can just
Tim already reviewed the KEP, I think. Did one pass over it, so I think he knows. And I know he's super heavily involved in the pod security replacement stuff. Cool. That was quick. Thank you for thanks everyone. Who can I CC? If Mike Brown is here, can they add their GitHub tag or something?
I have CC.
Cool.
I think Michael is just already trying to assign to himself right now.
Oh, great. Awesome. That was quick. Thank you, everyone. And I'd love to hear everyone's comments on the CAP. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, and also I CC'd a couple of folks earlier before this meeting because I saw Manu already there and represent the SIG Node and also the cryo. And I also CC'd the Sergey and represent of the continuity and the CRI also because there's also CRI related stuff. And also you are also got the team or Claire. If team Claire in the still in the SIG Node, definitely we will ask him to review this one. So, but he already reviewed this one. So you are covered by a bunch of the good reviewers there. Yeah.
Sounds good.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Okay, let's move to next one. Rick, do you want to talk about this?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I'm Neeraj. I'm the first-time contributor to Kubernetes community. And the issue which I'm working on is, so basically it asks to redirect std out and std err to some files instead of the predefined log files. So the couple of questions which comes to my mind is, and I think one of them on which Elena has confirmed is that does this require a full-fledged KEP because it kind of touches upon the pods API. So that was one. And the second one was that while I'm working on this KEP or the technical solutioning, could there be someone who I can reach out to get initial design feedback or technical feedback?
I think, hey Neeraj, so so also like Don, like Derek and I have been like having some internal conversations around the CRI logging format and some of the challenges we are seeing in production, like the way things are right now. Like some of the things that we see missing is a way to do throttling. Like in the past, we've had customers that are using the Docker journal logging driver that we contributed. And like journal is able to put back pressure on the logs and so on. So I feel that this kind of fits in this category, but like just looking at the description, Neeraj, like I'm not clear what you are suggesting because today the CRI log format is going to a file. So are you saying that you want to additionally send to another file because that has serious performance implications, like based on what we have seen?
Yeah, right. So what actually I understood from this task is that it needs to just send to a very specific file. Not an additional file, but just one file. You specify that this is where std out should go, and this is where std err should go.
Okay, so you want to separate the two streams somehow.
Yeah. So basically, generally people kind of modify the Docker image and specify where should std out should go, where should std err should go. But there are a couple of scenarios where people they don't have control over the images. So what they're asking is that can we have a specific feature in the pod spec via which we can control this?
So like today, like when you parse the CRI log format, you should be able to separate the std out and the std err. There is one edge case though, like if one of them outputs a /n in the middle while the other is still going, you may have some issues. Like we have a bunch of these problems captured. So so I'm not sure like this is something we want to just go and do one thing. Maybe this is a bigger story that we take a look at the whole CRI and look at the problems and the solutions and do an overall KEP. What do you think, Don?
Actually, this topic is being discussed when we first designed CRI. I saw Lantao join today's meeting. Maybe Lantao can fill the gap here. So initially have the proposal. There's the additional attach additional file. Also redirect the different file for the standard out and the standard arrow. And we didn't do that. I think there's the many reason, and one reason it is we think about even today's like using the journey and many other logging mechanism. Actually, what we have already covered most cases. I know your cases is not covered, but there's other way to do like the different logging warning. We also talk about, I think there's some people in the product already using additional logging warning. And so that's why we didn't do. And they also have the complexity concern and also the performance concern raised by the people. So that's why we didn't move forward. So just like the Manu said, this is involve a lot of the CI design. This is why we've been back and forth design a couple times and didn't do this work in the past. So we can, and I think this need a real design cap sent to us. I just saw the Alala send that also request of the cap and start from the problem statement. Because I believe what you state here, actually there's the different way to address issue, but I'm not sure all the possibility is cover your cases here, but from high level, what I just heard, I think there's some workaround, and I want to know why the workaround doesn't fit into your cases here first. Because when we first talk about, and there's also have the, we talk about all those kind of cases, and it looks like the existing one plus like a warning, logging warning, plus like a journey, and basically most of the things is actually covered. Not to, so that's why we didn't really pursue this further. So I want to understand what's the problem and which use cases didn't really indeed cannot cover. Why the workaround not work for your cases here?
Yeah, actually, this is Lantao. Actually, I think I read this video. I mean this issue a while back, and if I remember correctly, what you want is that you have a container image that's legacy. You don't know the code. You don't want to change. You don't want to change it, but you want to pass its output from the other container. That's my understanding. And I think as mentioned that we already output the std and stdio to a file, log file on the node, and if there's no security concern, I just want to know what's your concern, because if there's no security concern, you can actually just mount that log file into the other container and pass the output from the other container. There's already that file. It's just that it's on the host instead of in the pod environment or the container environment. So if that model doesn't work, what's the problem? Do you have any security concern about it or any other issue?
So I think it requires a privilege escalation or something. And the initial person probably who raised this issue, they kind of offer some kind of pass or that kind of service. So they just wanted that if there's an out-of-the-box way of doing this from Kubernetes, then actually that would be great. Instead of they going and modifying the container image, or they putting logs onto a volume and reading from them.
You don't need the modified image, at least. It's just like okay, maybe how about this way? Lantao, maybe you can, I haven't read the proposal yet, and then maybe you can give that suggestion how can pursue. And
okay.
You still don't think about that solve your problem, can you more clearly write down what's your exactly problem and why it's not to solve your problem, so we can, and then we can start talk about the solution, right?
So Dawn, just for clarity, because I'm reading through this issue. So the statement is, some applications, specifically CRI, do not write to var log. Therefore, some result values have to be collected from standard out. So basically, I guess there's concerns about these things not going to standard out for some reason. And then apparently you can redirect them to a file according to this, but then that involves changing the entry point of the container, which in a lot of cases is not desirable. So I would say, yeah, like as currently is, I would almost wonder if this is a documentation issue and not like an actual API spec issue. Like we don't have documentation telling you how to work around this or do things for this. And so we've got a lot of people who are like, oh, I want this. But like, you can already do this. We just don't tell you how. So I would say that's possibly something that we could consider as well, because making API changes to the pod spec are quite involved and usually need like pretty good, strong arguments behind them.
I agree, but from what the problem described, I think we already handled. I totally agree. It's maybe somewhere the documentation falling apart because our system is so complicated. And I occasionally see the people remove our good documentation and just think about that's like stale or duplicate or it's just too much detail. A lot of people remove, they think about too much detail and which is messed up. So we can fix those problems. But again, I want to say like maybe we still didn't solve your problem. I want to understand what's your problem, more detail. From high level, I think we covered that long time back. So that's why let's come back to the problem more stack. First, try to solve your workaround and solve your problem first. If still, and then we come back, what's your problem? And we can see how we are going to solve. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I will comment on your issue and tell you what the work on is, and feel free to reply if it doesn't work and if you have any concern about it.
Sure. Thank you.
Thanks, Lantao. Okay, so next one. Let's talk about the flag and the component config. I didn't Sky. Sorry, I might pronounce your name wrong. Sorry.
Yeah. So hello everyone. So I wanted to raise this issue and wanted to know how to proceed further. So few days back, there were efforts going on to migrate flags to component config. And lots of kubelet flags have been marked as deprecated without any timeline for removal. And all those flags shows as they are deprecated. And whatever new flags and new options that are being added to kubelet are added, we are adding them in config and flag on both places. And the new options are as soon as you add them, it is marked as deprecated. So it's it looks confusing from users perspective that new options you are adding and they looks deprecated as soon as you have added. So what should we do in this regards? How should we proceed? Should we stop adding flags kubelet to all? Should we stop adding flags altogether? Or should we stop making them marking as deprecated? So particularly we were getting problems from cluster lifecycle SIG KubeADM. It is getting confusing and lot of usability problem for them. So we want you can say a clear guidance from the SIG that how should we go ahead.
So I'm just kind of digging through this, Aditi, and I looked at the email that was linked in the issue, and it was quite old. It was from 2019. So I'm looking at the Google group. This looks like it's owned by a working group, and I would expect that the working group would be responsible for coordinating this. But according to their mailing list, both of the chairs of that working group have stepped down. So the working group is effectively defunct. So I'm not sure what we should do. As soon as you turn on your camera, do you have thoughts?
Yes, I do. Unless Fabrizio wants to go first.
No, I leave you the honor.
Thank you. So yes, the working group is dissolved, and there is nobody taking that up. But this kubelet, the working group was trying to churn the whole world kind of thing. They've taken up all components, so it was going to be hard for them to reach their goal. For us, I think the blast radius is smaller if it's just kubelet. And like the first thing that we need to do is stop the bleeding, in the sense that we should, if we are going to add a command line parameter, then it should be in the config also. And ideally, we should avoid adding a command line parameter, right? And if we want to do, then it should be in the config too. So we would set up some unit tests to make sure that people trip on it. So we stop people from adding things and remind reviewers that things can't be added using unit tests. And then we have to figure out a timeline when we would remove the deprecated flags and publish it, so people know when to expect this. So those are the two things that I would want us to do, Ilana and Don. Aditi, does that reflect with what you were thinking about?
Yeah, so actually, like from the PRs I have seen, like you have also raised one issue that the flag should be added to, the option should be added to flag and config as well. But most of the PR, like almost all PR following this consensus that it is being added to both the places. But the problem is that the new flags are deprecated, the old flags are deprecated, and we are not going to do like everything. If you grep all the kubelet flags, everything looks deprecated.
Yeah, so what I would say, Aditi, there is, we should have a page somewhere, maybe in community, where we or maybe update the cap or add a new cap that says this is the date when we are going to, the flags are going away, right? We should have that information somewhere that's easy to look up.
So how much time we should give, like 3 cycles, 1 year? Like they have been marked as deprecated like 2 cycles back, you can say.
I think that we just need to ensure that it's like written down and announced. Like they've already been deprecated for goodness knows how long. So I would say like probably the blocking thing here is not that, you know, we haven't given enough time or notice necessarily for deprecation. It's that nobody is owning and coordinating this effort. So everything's getting done piecemeal and there's no comms going out saying, by the way, stop using flags, because it would be best if we did that all in sort of one fell swoop, as opposed to be like, oh, okay, we got rid of this flag. Oh, okay, we got rid of that flag. Yeah. Like that's probably the thing that is driving like downstream consumers like KubeADM nuts, because how do they know which flag or which flag or which flag? I would say that would be a bad user experience. So if we could just do it all at once, that would be great. I don't think we should do it for this release, given there's not enough notice. But if we could have a cap that was like, okay, here's the state of the world, here's the implementation history. We know we want to get rid of this stuff. Like, here's the design proposal for how we're going to do the deprecations. Here are the dates, and like give everybody an opportunity to give feedback, and then coordinate that all within Node. I think that that would be totally doable and would probably be the right amount of comms and would ensure that we get it done.
Yeah, it should be similar to like Docker shim, right? Everyone knows now that it's happening in 124 and like no one is aware of this. So it'll be a surprise if we do it immediately. People need to prepare and migrate.
I want to understand this component config status, because the Kubernetes, the SIG Node is the first one, follow the call out. When we deprecate move a lot of the flag to the config, and then that allows a lot of deprecation. Other components didn't follow for more than 1 year. So that's why I'm kind of so this is why we also pause, because we cannot just make the community announcement and just based on Kubernetes, right? So, and not Kubernetes, the SIG Node manage the component. We just cannot do that, because all the other components still using flag and still doing migrate to the config. So we paused for 1 year, and then after 1 year, other components slowly say, oh, they are also started doing that work. So I just want to understand what's the process. The reason I can share some background context. So we basically go through all those go through all the Kubernetes flag, and then identify some is going to be permanent, and we immediately take action, and through the couple quota effort, and move them to the component config. Some is left there is just because either feature is going to be deprecated, or it is the config, that flag file is going to change. So that's why we mark deprecated. So I do think about a lot of feature may already deprecated feature itself, or it is the feature is already graduated by the GA. So the flag can be deprecated safely, no issue. But there are certain of the flags call out as the deprecated. For example, dynamic Kubernetes config also have some like flag related listed there. So then we call out deprecated, but then dynamic Kubernetes config itself, it is not removed. So so that flag still there. So we could remove, like the surrogate help this quota, and to deprecate that feature, remove that feature. So related flag can be completely removed, and not just deprecated, right? So the feature can be deprecated, and the flag further removed, the source code and the flag. So there's the mixed situation. So I just want to understand the other components config status, and it's beyond SIG Node here. But again, SIG Node, you can really, if Kubernetes related, deprecated is just deprecated. We really mean it. So we did spend the effort to add really serious about component config. It's not a flag, yeah.
Fabrizio?
Yeah, so I agree with this concern. The situation across Kubernetes is confusing for the user, and also for the implementer like of Kubernetes or the tool on top of Kubernetes. So the problem is raised here in SIG Node because Kubernetes is the only component that is already issued a deprecation notice. And people and tools are asking, okay, but we have to go to component config, but they are not implemented in the same state, stuff like that. So the situation is really complex. What is really important for a tool like Kubernetes is that we have at least something consistent. So if Kubernetes want to use component config, we should be able to basically pilot each existing knobs through the component. And then maybe there are also other ongoing efforts, like for instance, the instance-specific component config, stuff like that. We have to, let me say, try to find a way forward to out of this mess, because it is really confusing for the user and for us implementing stuff on top of that. So it's not, let me say, it's not a problem only of Kubernetes, I agree. This is cross Kubernetes, but in Kubernetes kind of more pressing because people look at this deprecation notice and they get worried and stuff like that.
Yeah, and ideally, I wish there was people who are continuing to work on component config, but we know that there isn't. Kubelet is special in the sense that the rest of the things run as containers, so it's less of an issue. Kubelet is the one where there's a lot of magic going on between kubeadm and kubelet, and then kubelet starting everything else as static pods. So kubelet is a little bit more special. And I'm hoping that the people that are working on this component config just for kubelet will be able to help the rest of the components over a period of time, instead of trying to put everything in the same bucket. Then we make progress nowhere, right? Just like we did for structured logging, we were able to convert the kubelet first. So I think we should lead the way here, Don. That's the way I look at it. And we are in a mess, and we have to stop digging.
I just want to say we lead them, like 4 years ago, we lead that one. And we even want to address the Kubernetes wide of the problem. But just like what you say, Kubernetes is so big, right? So, and SIG Node actually has the most of the request issues and features. So we have to see the scalable about what kind of things. So we basically, at the end, we decided, okay, finish what every single component we own and make sure there's at least anything integrated with us. There's the rule, there's the policy, right? So we follow all those kind of rules and policy. And sometimes even our rule and policy reward by the other community, other things, because they don't understand the complexity on the node side. And because node side have the complexity is different from other components. Other components, their challenge. Our challenge it is the scalability. Every single node will run our system. So have to be. We also carry a lot of legacy stuff, right? So like the different kernel version, different system D, different those kind of different container runtime. Other is actually more centralized. And so could be like one size set for. So for us, we have to follow the rule. But on the other hand, we have the most, just like what you say, we have the most law to deal with different kernel, different system, different container runtime, different network component. We basically already make ourselves most of the flexible, most partner oriented we could do. And we basically cite leading of the community by the example instead of just call out but don't execute. I think we do call out, execute, and I think that's the best leadership from me perspective instead of just opinion leads. And that's at least that's the way how I set the leadership, set by execution and follow those things. So I think about we basically could have our internal rule, and we could call out like kubeadm, how we are integrated with us. Here it is, we do mean about deprecation flag, right? But I also agree with you, Alala, and earlier mentioned that even we deprecate, maybe we did the poor job to set the timeline deprecate, but the deprecation actually is mean this community really mean that's deprecating. We won't reward back. And we can start from there, and then we can fix the problem. Like for all the deprecation things, we give the timeline, and we try to do our best. That one, that's all I can do, I think.
Yeah,
I agree
there is one more option, which is like going in the opposite direction, right? Like drop the config flag, config file, and make sure that everything is in command line parameters, and remove all the deprecation notices, and like we are done, right? Like,
well, I don't think that's a realistic option. I think that this needs to be done. I agree. Like that's the whole reason that we had a working group for it. Right. I think I agree with Don in that like the kubelet is really overloaded right now. We have a lot of stuff going on. It's one of the largest SIGs in terms of code that we own, and this is the sort of thing I think, and the kubelet is also a weird special case, right? It typically does not run in a container because its job is to manage the container runtime, unlike other components. And so, for other components where it's like, oh, I'm running in a container, I can just change like the commands and, the unit file to run it. That's not really the case for the kubelet. So just given how much stuff we have going on, and that it honestly might be easier for other components to lead here, which are smaller and can figure out the standardization, I would say it might make sense for someone else to pick up the effort, or at least try to have some sort of coordination. In terms of like something like structured logging, I mean, honestly, that was just a practicality thing in that like, oh, I'm working on Node and like somebody needs to be a test case for structured logging. So I volunteered to lead that. But I would say this is not probably the right thing to be a test case in Node, just because our config is so big and complex and there's so many flags, and like, let's get all the details ironed out.
Elana, then basically what we are ending up saying that we won't do anything, and I don't believe anybody else will pick up either. So if we want to do it for our own good, we do it. Let's not put the burden on somebody else, because nobody else is going to do it for any other component. Like I can guarantee you right now, if you want to do it because it makes sense for us, we do it. Otherwise, we don't do it.
So that raises a good question. If nobody else is going to do it and we don't have the bandwidth to do it, then why is anybody doing this at all?
So Aditi wants to do it, and she'll be rounding up a few more people, hopefully, to help with this work.
So if we have capacity to do that, does it make more sense to be working on this than other stuff? Like, this is a genuine question.
I just want to say the SIG node, the reason we call out that and do that 4 years ago as the first SIG, it is because our user, anything have the leads for this one. Earlier I mentioned that we definitely flag not flexible enough to satisfy all those requirements. So that's why component config satisfy. This is also why we have the dynamic Kubernetes config, right? So I believe everyone here, it is the vendor provide the Kubernetes offer, they will understand actually the component config maybe more flexible compared to Flag. But anyway, there's many ways to solve that problem. So I think for us, we definitely needs. So, but I believe for other components, they also have the needs. But like Alila said, their need is not so strong as us. But for the overall Kubernetes healthy and easy usability, all those kind of things, actually unify that one, consistent that it is definitely is the benefit for the users. So we are going to, because we do have user and partner team engagement, all this lead. SIG Node will keep current status, make sure all those kind of things. It is the config, component config, and that pick out the flag. And we continue to do that work because for benefit of the user. I do think about the community should pick up this work. If they didn't pick up this work, maybe it is just because priority is not very important. But for our user and the Kubernetes user engage, which is admin, right? Cluster admin, and to manage their node workload. And we need to keep our standard component config is important. Switch back to the flag. So many law, it's just impossible for those admin managing their system. At least we solve that problem.
I have a couple of questions because I think there are at least some things we can do right now. So I guess the first question is, I was under the impression that we're already not supposed to be adding any new flags to the kubelet. And I am not aware of any new flags that have been added recently. Like everything that I've worked on has not been a flag. So
we hold the back.
If we can like maybe publicize that a little bit better. I have not seen new flags. We do not want to be adding new flags, and we should make sure that's clear. I think the other thing that we could do right now that would be very helpful is going through and like at least doing the inventory, making sure, I know that there was like an issue that was linked, making sure that's up to date in terms of like the status of all of those flags. So at least like we've communicated, you know, here's the state of things. We may not necessarily make any progress on it, but like, here's where it's at. Long-term, our goal is XYZ. But like at least ensuring that it's well documented and up to date. Like I think those are two things that we could definitely do right now. Beyond that, I don't know what value there would be in like trying to, you know, for example, like we could go and like make a cap for this, but just compared to like other sort of technical debt that we have in the kubelet, I don't know if this one is more pressing. Like that's genuinely like, we've got so much stuff going on. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's interesting because there is interconnect between kubelet and SIG cluster lifecycle. That's why it's pressing, Elana. It's not pressing because of just kubelet itself, but it is crossing a boundary here. And that's why Lubomir is here and Fabrizio is here.
I mean, I can say that this is
not good enough for them.
Yeah, I think that I can say that this is very confusing on the user side. And I think we should treat the users with high priority. When the users don't know what to use, and especially you also have cases where a certain flag is present, but the mirror option inside the config is missing, which is especially more confusing. But at least some of these flags are not deprecated. We should get the story for the Kubernetes at least consistent, in my opinion. Mirror flags to have options in the config. Start removing flags that we don't need. quite frankly, Dims, I think we should actually create a proposal that is signed by SIG architecture to have something horizontal across the project. kubeadm is following the kubelet, but kubeproxy and kubeschedule are not. They have different rules.
Lubomir, in the end, we need to find people who are interested in this work and want to do the work, right? Like here right now, there are some people who want to do this work. And I'm hearing from Elana that this is not important enough, and that I'm trying to counter
I don't
that
know if
and
it's
say,
important enough. I don't want to say it's not important enough. I just genuinely cannot prioritize that among the other like literally 20 some caps that we have ongoing. And this one's a tech debt thing, which is important for us to be addressing. It sounds to me like I would hesitate, Lubomir, to trying to like pass the ball to SIG architecture, because I think that was done. We got a working group, and then the working group died before it finished its job. It does sound like potentially, and this is not to push work on other folks, but if like SIG cluster lifecycle is the one that's feeling the most pain from this, then like being the sort of like voice of the user and saying like, okay, here are our needs, here's the pain, like, can we do something?
That's exactly what the three of them are here for. Lubomir, Fabrizio, and Aditi. That's what they are here for, Elana.
Yes, so I'm trying to call that out and say, like, I don't think that we should then try to like push it again to like somebody else. We should keep this within the group. And if there's like a specific proposal, like, I don't know, Dawn, what do you think?
Yeah, I want to clarify to the team. What I heard from Alila is not prioritize. We don't want to prioritize. It's just don't think about the SIG node is the right SIG to prioritize this for entire of the Kubernetes community, because
we are not trying to prioritize for the entire community. We are just dealing with between kubeadm and kubelet, period, at this point. If there is an interest on a cap for between kubeadm and kubelet, we can do that. If you don't want to do that, that's fine too. We'll just go do something else.
So let's how about this way? Like what I suggested earlier, we treat the deprecation, and we treat the component config seriously by the SIG node, and we didn't add a new flag since like if I can recall, and there's the only one emergency people add one time of the flag last 4 years when we first have this one. But quickly we just remove that one, convert that to, there's the one big issue we did once only. And so we are working on by each release, and we identify one or two, like this time the dynamic Kubernetes config related stuff is going to be processed, right? So we base on that, just please the kubeadmin folks, and anything's caused the issue, let us know. We are focused on the documentation, existing stuff, but we just cannot like one time get rid of all the deprecation flag. I mentioned that the deprecation, there's the legacy feature, a lot of is behind, need more engineering resource. This is why we did. Some is missing from component config is just because that flag need to be deprecated, removed forever. But we already mark that deprecated strong, which is give you signal strongly suggest you never using it, because the feature already implemented, only like that you want to override or something like that. So there's the case by cases, we could do more documentation, more those kind of things. And each quarter, each release, we can planning to deprecate more and to clean those kind of things. But just like one, cannot do the one-time fix all here.
Yeah, absolutely, Don. We are not advocating for one-time clean everything. What I want to do really is, like Elana was saying, that we take stock of which are the flags still there, are they deprecated, when were they deprecated, and come up with like a new timeline for each of the other ones, preferably in buckets of a few each, not just one after another. And like you said, do it on a every release. We're going to get rid of a few. So if that is acceptable, then I'm happy for Aditi and Fabrizio and Lubomir to help from that side.
The only other thing I'd add to that, Dims, is I would say let's try not to boil the ocean, because I think part of the problem with this is like the bigger the scope, the less likely it is to get done. So like let's just start by focusing on what are the flags that are causing like SIG cluster lifecycle pain. Let's just deal with those flags, and then if we want to expand, like if we keep getting distracted by, well, like what is the state of all of the things in the kubelet, I think we're not going to finish.
So Elena, one specific thing that I found is if we publish a schedule, there are people who jump in and clean things up. You know, especially there's folks from India and China who are very good at spotting these calendar entries, and they come and help out with a PR. It's just that we haven't done that, and I would like to do that.
Sure. Okay, thanks, Dim, to pick up this work and initiate the effort. We ran out of time. Maybe we can meet the Sergey quickly. Or Sergey, do you think about quickly you can announce something, or you think about we need to discuss? Then we have to punt to next, or we can follow up.
Next week. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. And bye-bye. Have a good weekend. Have a good week. Sorry, we left weekend.